prevalence and the developments in artificial intelligence field. Normally, webinars or workshops are sort of prescriptive and didactic. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you my story, how I navigated, uh, I mean, this emergence of ChatGPT. Uh, what I faced and how I dealt with. And uh, I'm going to distribute this story or divide this story in three phases. That is pre-ChatGPT practices, what were my practices, uh, assessment, and my philosophy are kind of things. Obviously, there's a philosophy behind every practice. Then I'll talk about disruption and challenges, and that is the emergence of ChatGPT. And finally, after that, what happened. When I say ChatGPT, I mean anything artificial intelligence. So necessarily, when I say artificial intelligence, it doesn't mean ChatGPT. It may mean many other things that are emerging and coming out, like Bing and Bard, and I mean name them, and you will see what's happening. What's this whole horizon of artificial intelligence emerging. If I say LLM, it means the same thing, large language module, and I assume that all of you have used and are well familiar with ChatGPT. Uh, I wanted to spend some time on that, but I'm not going to do that for the sake of economy of time uh, and to save time for other things. So if you haven't explored ChatGPT, I'm sure that after this session, I would have sort of stimulated enough interest for and you go and you explore ChatGPT is. So my purpose in presenting my story is to sort of stand in the dock and tell you what I did and what kind of situation I faced and how I dealt with that. And in the process, I'll be seeking your evaluation, analysis, reflection, and feedback because I need sort of reassurance and a trust in my practices and how I dealt with the situation. So I might be stopping from here and there and asking you, okay, what you would have done if you were in this situation or what I did. What's your opinion about to how artificial intelligence is shaping assessment in higher education? Opportunities, I may not talk because if I start talking about opportunities, it'll be too much, you know. So I'll just focus on challenges and how to deal with these challenges. And then at the end, I'll be sharing with you some strategies that for and I found and I found them useful. So starting with the beginning, I was a teacher and I started teaching. And then I discovered that assessment is also something, and it's an important part of my everyday's job. Uh, and at that time, I started practicing what we call a standard assessment paradigm. I mean, uh, my assessment practices align more to this paradigm, or in other words, traditional assessment. Uh, this kind of assessment has a predefined set of items. We use them to assess our students, their proficiencies in one or more traits, and then the data, which are basically their grades, we use for inferences, or maybe we interpret them in some other kind of data and use them. Uh, this is an overview of what kind of type of traditional assessments I used then. So I used multiple choice questions and essay questions and problem solving and this and that. And all of them have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. So, for example, multiple choice questions are quick to grade. And but at the same time, they need certain skills to design. Essay questions, yes, good to judge students' thinking and their ideas and other things, their proficiencies, but at the same time, it takes time to grade them. And then consistency is a bit of a problem because when you grade the first essay and by the time, if you have like 30 students, by the time you reach the last essay, it's a bit challenging to maintain consistency. Oral exams, for example, have a big issue of objectivity, how you remain objective. Same as, I mean, some other forms of the assessment. So what I did, after administering this assessment, I graded my students, mostly not in later grades, but some kind of numerical value. 70, 80 are percentages, which were then converted into these grades. And then I reported them in the report card of the students to their parents. They took the card home and the parents had a look at that. And then they also either were happy or sad. And if all my students had a good percentage, I felt like very proud that I'm a good teacher and my students were also happy. And if some of them scored something low, then obviously it dented my trust and my confidence in myself. And sometimes disgruntled parents of that teacher, that student would end up in the school head's office, and I would have been called and asked to explain why the student scored low. So that was the beginning. And then came a time when I joined higher education and I discovered, obviously during all this time, I was also developing as a teacher. I was learning, I was trying to explore what's good, what's wrong, what can be done better, right? So somehow that was there from the beginning, a lot of quest, a lot of search for getting better and better, improving my teaching practices and improving my assessment practices. And in the process, I discovered that standard assessment paradigm is problematic. There are many problems with this paradigm. So now, I mean, if you can share with me, do you agree with me that this paradigm is problematic and can pose certain problems? Anyone? You can turn on your mic or you can type in chat. Thank you. Please feel free. There is no right or wrong answer. So we expect our students to speak up. So yes. Okay, let me ask it another way. If you agree with me that standard assessment paradigm has problems, thumbs up. And if you disagree, do nothing. Okay, so I continue again. Yes, yes, okay. I can't see. Christopher, thank you. Thank you. So you agree with me that it's problematic. Now, what are the problems? I discovered that these 5 problems with standard SAP. Number 1, it's onerous. It increases the workload of the teacher. You need to design, administer, and then you need to like grade it, and it's a lot of work. If you are designing proper assessment, it's a lot of work. It needs a lot of skills. The other problem with this is discrete items are there. So or rather the assessment is discrete. So we are assessing isolated components of skills or learning, and we just focus on one and assess that one in isolation rather than like taking the whole spectrum into consideration. Then it's the same for all students. It's uniform. So we do not take into consideration the creativity, individual creativity and learning styles and other individual propensities of our students. And another problem is it's being inauthentic. So it doesn't relate to the real world. The basic purpose of education is to prepare students for the real world. And all the tasks in this paradigm are mostly no link to the real world. And then it's antiquated, like outdated. So what happens, for example, if we still use paper and pen, we are ignoring what the potential that digital assessment brings for us. So that is one example of its being antiquated. And this morning I was reading, and this kind of assessment goes back 1300 years 1300 years back to some Chinese, like initially they used this kind of assessment and then it prevailed. Then another big problem for me was that this kind of assessment is done in a surveillance environment. So there is either an exam hall or within the class you invigilate students, You give them the assessment, then you try to, and in some places they use cameras to sort of like invigilate them. Even drones are now there. So that was a big problem for me. And why it was a big problem for me? Because exams always stimulate certain kind of environment. They are not at all linked to what's happening outside the world. So the students then, uh, like in a artificial environment, sitting there and being administered a test, and then they do it, and it has a washback, very strong washback effect. So because of the pressure of these tests, then the teachers teach to the test, and the students learn to the test. They are just concerned with how to uh, pass the exam and good grades rather than what they are learning. So that was my big concern problem with this assessment paradigm. And due to these problems, many universities, for example, Deakin University in Australia, they are increasingly shifting from this invigilated exams to assignments, open book assignments, and other forms of assessment. So for example, in the last couple of years, starting 2019 till 2022, they reduced their exams by 84% in different courses and units. So that's what's happening. And these were my discoveries then. But still, I persisted because I wasn't aware of any other paradigms of assessment, but I kept looking. And then I discovered that assessment is not to grade students, to give them a grade, but to foster their learning. So traditional assessment measures their learning in terms of a number, but assessment should be a way to develop them. It should have a formative influence on them. And then it should be authentic, as I mentioned earlier, like it should relate to the real world. It should empower the students. It should give them an opportunity to reflect on their learning, to engage deeply with the subject matter, and so many things. And traditional assessment increasingly failed to do that. So I started looking for certain kind of adjustments and modifications to my assessment practices. And some of the adjustments that I made were these. So I increased the frequency and the amount of formative assessment. I brought in performance-based assessment where the students needed to perform certain kind of tasks. For example, if they needed to like analyze something, I asked them to perform it rather than write it. Collaboration, so it brings in the social aspect of assessment. So the students are social, like engage with each other, and it has social dynamics. Then assessment of 21st century skills. So I'm not just assessing the contents. If I've taught them some tenses or grammar or some paragraph writing, I'm not just assessing them. I'm going beyond these contents and linking them to the skills that they would need in the real world. And I'm also assessing these in my um, uh, uh, assessment task. I'm also focusing on them. Then I brought in a lot of alternative assessments. So instead of like students every time writing a paragraph, sometimes I ask them, okay, now record a video and send it to me. Even in Moodle, like whenever there's a task, I say, okay, you can go and sit and record yourself and just save it. Uh, Instead of writing a research paper, sometimes I ask them to prepare a poster of their research, right? And then I brought in feedback culture where there was a regular feedback session so that they could sort of keep on reflecting, listening to me, reflecting on their learning. And there was a sort of communication between them and me, and they knew what they are doing and I knew what they are thinking and that thing. The outcome of these types of adjustments was some kind of artifact of learning by the student. So an artifact is like a tangible, observable evidence which demonstrates the students' understanding or learning, their progress, and it becomes an evidence of what they learned. It can trigger some kind of reflection for me and for them as well. And it's also useful for documentation. So if we need some kind of documentation for to keep the record. Obviously, assessment is linked to so many things, accreditation, institutional decision making, and other so many things. So obviously, for that, we also needed that. That's right. And this artifact took the shape of essays in my course, especially term paper, presentations, projects, and portfolio. And my dear friend Ian is probably there. So in his course, they probably take the shape of laboratory reports. So this is how I continued. And my greatest concern here was plagiarism, because these modes of assessment are prone. I mean, they create a greater opportunity for plagiarism, and all students don't cheat, but some would cheat, and when they are under pressure, they cheat more. But then I try to train them. I try to sort of elevate their ethical values and tell them not to cheat. And I taught them ways and means of avoiding cheating, not to copy and paste, not to engage in contract teaching, and not to steal each other's ideas. And if I needed some help, Turnitin was there to tell me if something was wrong with some assessment artifact. So something was copied from here or there, or something was similar to some other source, and then I took my decision based on Turnitin, like a similarity report. And all was quiet and peaceful in the paradise of my assessment and teaching. Everything was going well, but then this is not how things work. A serpent comes, and this serpent to the paradise of my teaching and learning is in the form of ChatGPT. It was launched on November 2022, and things changed. Again, instead of telling you how it works, maybe you can contact me sometime and we can talk about it. But for the brevity of this session and for the economy of time, and also knowing that we need to go and play soccer, I'll move to what it meant, right? What ChatGPT could do. So immediately after its launch, this guy, Theo, did some research, sophisticated research, and he came up with some stunning and remarkable claims. And the summary of these claims is that the capabilities of ChatGPT are near human. If they're not human, they're near human, or at least they are at par with humans. And he made certain very strong claims here. For example, critical thinking, reasoning, precision, relevance, right? And all these things. So previously, only humans were thought to be capable of this, but now ChatGPT could mimic that. And while everything was fine, I mean, these things were really remarkable for me. The most shocking and worrisome aspect was that his prediction that now the student could use it for cheating, because what it produces is nearly human and it's difficult to distinguish it from like if it is human or not. So that was my greatest concern. And obviously it changed everything for me. And there, I mean, it made me go into considering my assessment practices. And right. So what implication is it for assessment? For example, essays, right? Probably most of us, it's not just language course thing, it's most of us use essays in our courses, right? Even their senior year project is like a large essay, a mega essay, or a larger scale. So ChatGPT could produce very good essays. Basically, that's what it was programmed for, trained for. And it meant now you just needed to give a prompt to ChatGPT and it would produce an essay for you, right? Then readings. we give a lot of readings to our students, and we expect that they understand, they learn, they develop their critical thinking, their knowledge of the course and discipline by these readings, and then they engage, they show their engagement and internalization of these readings through some kind of tasks like writing a response paper or critical summary, or even they use it in their essays or research papers or final year project. But now ChatGPT could summarize and apply that information. So you just needed to like put some kind of information there and it would summarize for you, and you copy and paste. And then there are other artificial intelligence apps or platforms which can read PDFs. You got Elicit, which sort of retrieves research on a particular topic for you. It summarizes it. It tells you the strength of the research, the weaknesses of the research, how many participants were there, what kind of was it qualitative or quantitative, what are the findings. You don't need to read the whole paper. You can just by, like, if you're smart, you can copy the abstracts and this information, and you can come up with a very good literature review. So that was the problem with reading, right? And then I think Musa and Khalik Nazar and Mukim can tell me better. I'm not an expert in this area, how it can solve problem sets, mathematical or chemistry or physics or. Right?
It isn't ChatGPT, but there are other AI applications that can.
Right.
ChatGPT and large language models are not capable of solving mathematical problems, but other AI applications can.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So luckily, yeah. Yeah. And then some results came up, right? How ChatGPT, GPT-3 and GPT-4 performed on certain exams and beaten human beings. And then it could deal. I mean, it may not be ChatGPT, but as I said, when I say ChatGPT, it means AI, and when I say AI, it might mean ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is my like umbrella term for any AI app. So visual problems, it could solve that, right? Like here, Bing is asked to solve a problem, and this Benjamin Franklin said it better, if better is possible, good is not enough, right? So ChatGPT was this good, but it was not enough because still better is possible, right? There's always room at the top and more and more and more. So to my dismay, and I'm showing example from ChatGPT, like how from one version to another, it's improving. So its own claims on its own website about the GPT-4 is most advanced system, right? Then another claim is difficult problems with greater accuracy thanks to its broader general knowledge and problem-solving abilities. Then surpasses ChatGPT reasoning capabilities. It could reason. And this morning I asked it something, and it said, no, you're not right. And then it gave me some reasons. And then how it performs on certain exams. And only in 6 months. ChatGPT-3 was launched, I think, in November 2022, and now I went to their website yesterday, and this is there yesterday, so like 9 months, right? Almost 10 months. So if better is possible, good is not enough, right? And the end is not there yet. It doesn't end here. It continues, and I discovered that I am set for some more surprises and some more disruptions and disasters for my assessment. Co-pilots. Anybody knows what co-pilots are and how do they work? If anybody can share, please, somebody from computer science or Chris.
Are you talking about things which complete sentences, reorganize sentences to improve the wording, that fix your grammar, that replace words with synonyms to foil plagiarism detectors, things like that?
Yes, right. So like ChatGPT is a separate website. You need an account to be there, and like some countries banned it. For example, we learned that with a Tajik phone number, probably you cannot create an account there because it's banned in Tajikistan and you cannot access it. But then university gives you access to Microsoft 365, and co-pilots will be like directly embedded there. And as Chris explained, it might, while you are typing in a Word editor, MS Word editor, it might correct your spellings, and it might make suggestions, and it might retrieve some information for you. You need not to be going to ChatGPT, copying from there, bringing it here. It will happen there and then either we have to, for example, either ban Office 365 or live with it. So things are going on. We are going for more and more of the artificial intelligence, right? And I found myself that from plagiarism, now I have to deal with AIGRism. So where I was conscious about, like, my students shouldn't plagiarize, they should give me an artifact which is original, which is their own, so I can make valid, reliable judgments about their learning, and then also help my teaching and their learning. And if university requires some kind of data based on those judgments, I should be able to provide them valid data. Now, AIGRism, it makes it even more difficult because immediately we learn that almost 20% of the students started using it for cheating. And another study reports like 1,000 students surveyed, and 1/3 of them admitted using it. They thought that it's cheating, but they also admitted using it. Right? And why is it such a concern, cheating, not just for immediate class and assessment, but it goes to the broader life? So cheating means the student haven't attained those like accreditation and learning outcomes and is not ready for the world yet. Right? So you suppose you end up with a doctor who graduated without achieving the learning outcomes, or a teacher who just got a teaching qualification as teaching your child without being properly qualified. Now, it wouldn't have been a great concern because, like in my previous life, pre-ChatGPT life, Turnitin was helping me if I had AIGRism detectors, and there were plenty. Even Turnitin came up with some tall claims. Right? The company which launched ChatGPT, that they also launched some kind of detector, and we were happy. We were waiting for it, and we were happy that Turnitin is coming with something because that's what's available to us in the university. But then the problem is that they are not reliable. For example, this guy Cavallo, he did some experiment and he fed a song from 1971, Stairway to Heaven, and GPT-0, um, uh, like a predominant size of it, it said it's like not human text. It's artificially generated, AI generated text. And based on this experiment, he reached the conclusion that regardless of their potential, these classifiers, right, are never error-free, and they cannot accurately classify human or AI written texts. And this was supported and corroborated by another research, right, that GPT detectors are sort of biased against non-native English writers, and they flag them more than they flag others. And these two studies were not like just the only studies. Then another study tells us this situation, right, where non-natives essays were like flagged as AI written because of like obviously non-native language brings some kind of diversity, varying language patterns. But when the words were changed either from simple to complex or from complex to simple, uh, the detection and classifying changed, right? And then I read something from Professor Cynthia, and this is like remarkable. And I was awestruck, like just by changing few words, she could reduce it from 95% fake to just 9% fake. And she didn't do like a lot of paraphrasing or something, right? It's just like making some sort of words there. I mean, the sentences are in the inverted commas. And then this is a more comprehensive study where these guys took 12 publicly available tools, two of them commercial, like Turnitin and Plagiarism Check, and they tested them, and they discovered that there are serious limitations in them. So my hope that, okay, AI is there, students are using it for rewriting, sorry, for writing and other things, and AI detectors will help me to spot AIGerism was misplaced. And then finally, this guy came up with the advice that either we take preventive measures or we rethink our academic assessment strategies. So what were the options for me here? Should I have ignored what's happening and just kept my practice going? Should I told my students not to use it in the course, otherwise they'll get a 0 or something, or ask my university to sort of like stop the this AI generator, right? Should I go back to the exam and in-class assessment days and start invigilating? Or should I embrace AI myself, design around it, or rethink totally my assessment? What would you suggest I do? Please turn on your mic and feel free to speak.
Chorshanbe has just made a suggestion.
Yes, Chorshanbe. Please turn on your mic because due to multiple screens and multiple
I just
windows.
wrote that, ask students to write their papers or written work in class on paper.
Okay, that's easy way out, definitely, invigilation or in-class assignments, right? But I already like mentioned certain problems with them, my perspective about them.
I think that in class, as Shoshanbe suggesting is not maybe applicable in some cases. For instance, research paper. How would you ask the students write research paper within 2 hours, or if you ask them to sit the whole day?
And this goes back to the logic of assessment, that assessment should be authentic. So in real life, we don't sit in a place and write under invigilation. We have our time, we do our research and other things, and then we write. So the experts of assessment tell us that create optimal conditions so they should match the real life conditions and the students feel better prepared for that. So yes, Dr. Mohsen came up with a combination of like eclectic or pragmatism, right? What works and what's required. Yes, valid one. Yeah, right. So what needs at what time and what abundance of what, right? But yes, uh, I mean, I'll definitely not ignore the situation, because if I'm ignoring the situation, I'm ignoring the learning of my students. Banning is not an option because it's going to be there, it's going to be live. And if I am banning it, then it's like I'm not letting my students learn how to live with AI. Invigilation has certain pros and certain cons, right? But I'll go for the last three, that is embrace it. Initially design around it, like what AI cannot do. So my assessment should be what it cannot do. and beyond that. But in the long term, I'll go for rethink my assessment. And Jason also supports this when he says that, and he creates a taxonomy that what should be done short term, what should be done medium term, and what should be done long term. And the three colors means like the traffic lights, red, orange, and green, right? So rethinking is the long-term solution because we have to live with AI. It's a disruption. It's going to change education. It's going to change the workplace. It's going to change life. And the classrooms are places to prepare our students for that. So now, what do we mean by rethinking assessment? Do we have some approaches? Anyone, any suggestions? Before I share with you like certain things that I found really useful. What do, if we are rethinking our assessment, what it really means? Okay, so again, I take the burden upon myself if no one is willing to like share with us their thoughts and their ideas. Right. So I'm sharing what I discovered. First of all, we need to have this when we are rethinking our assessment or any assessment now in the age of AI. My concern would be like these are the words of this guy. Who's this guy? Yeah, Leo. That AI is inescapable. Assessment should both assure learning in secure settings and adapt to the reality of AI in other settings as appropriate to each discipline. So obviously it's discipline specific, but then we cannot escape AI, we cannot ignore it, we cannot ban it. We need to embrace it and we need to rethink what we need to do. And then he comes up with a suggestion that we need to have a two-lane approach to assessment. Right? So there should be like, we should be thinking in two, let's say, pipes, right? On one lane, there should be assessing the learning, assurance of learning, right? And in the other lane, it should be human and AI collaboration. And some assessment will be in lane 1 and some will be in lane 2, but he tells us that never mix them up, never allow this assessment coming to that one and that one coming to this one. And then he also suggests that we give more weightage to AI and human collaboration because that's what they're going to do in life. Whereas lane 1, that is assurance of learning, is assessing if the contents, the course material, and the course learning outcome or the program learning outcomes have been achieved. Lane 2, that is human and AI collaboration, is preparing them for a real life situation. Yes, Christopher.
I'm skeptical that the concept of human AI collaboration, as expressed on an assessment, is actually a reasonable or viable way to think of it. Because the problem that we have in these assessments is that students use AI for things which they do not understand, as opposed to speeding up and increasing their productivity with things that they do understand. So it's that they do a part of the assignment which they know, and then they hand the other part of the assignment to the AI, which they do not know. And the AI gives an answer to the second part of the assignment, which the student is entirely unaware is accurate or inaccurate or of high quality or of low quality, and then submit.
Your point is valid.
If we could design an assignment so that the student could use AI to do more, as opposed to use AI to provide an answer to a question that the student does not know the answer to, then that's the only way that we can have real human AI collaboration on an assessment.
Yeah, I agree with that, but let's think in terms of contents. So we are assessing content learning, right? The course learning outcomes, what we call, and obviously course learning outcomes are linked to contents and contents are linked to course learning outcomes if we believe in this constructive alignment paradigm. So contents, yes, they know some contents, they don't know some contents. They give those contents to uh, AI and AI does the job and they present it as their own and we get what's written there, assurance of learning that they have learned something. But then, as I mentioned in when I was talking about the adjustments that I made, that we need to develop certain competencies and skills which are not related to the content but to the world outside, like critical thinking. And in this case, we call it evaluative judgment. What AI is doing, do I have evaluative judgment to assess if this is what I need from it? So I need a paragraph and or it creates me like, I'll go back to last year. A student came to me and he brought me a list of bibliography and I said, teacher, yes, I cannot find them anywhere. They're very relevant to my assignment, but I cannot find them anywhere. I said, go to library. He went to library. After 3 days, same problem. I said, okay, give them to me. I took the list and in the evening I sat on my laptop and started looking for them and I discovered none of them existed. Either the journal existed, the article didn't exist, the author existed, the article didn't exist, both existed, the journal doesn't exist. And then I got suspicious and I said, okay, where did you get this list from? He said, ChatGPT. Now this student wasted 3 days looking for that. If he could have used his evaluative judgment that what ChatGPT is doing me in this case is fake, is concocted, that time wouldn't have gone waste. So that is one, like we need to, when we are talking of two lane, in the second lane, human AI collaboration, and it will become clearer when I display my next slides. It's not the human AI collaboration is not in terms of the contents. It is in terms of the skills and competencies. That's what we mean there. And these are the examples. So now these examples are about assured assessment of learning, like the learning outcomes and contents. So the assessment takes this shape. So as Dr. Mohsin mentioned, there should be like a mix of all. So there's in-class assessment like tutorials and workshops, Viva, live simulations or other things. But at the same time, lane 2, these are the examples and I give you a moment to read them for yourself. And then if you have any comment, we can discuss them. Any comments now? So what we are trying to like achieve by lane 2, we are trying to make them interact with AI more and more. And in the process, they develop their understanding how it works. And they also develop certain skills. So for example, if a student can judge that this bibliographical list is fake, I'm just giving a superficial example. The student has evaluative judgment and critical judgment, right? So that is one example. Now, another approach to dealing with AI is a 4 directions approach by Professor Julie Chen. She works for Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And she basically suggest 4 broader principles that we should adopt whenever we are doing our assessment or rethinking our assessment. So the first one is from written description to multimodal explanation and application. So we just rely on the written product, but there should be, let's say, a video, right, part of the assignment, or maybe audio part of the assignment, or maybe some pictures, or maybe some even in class, some part in class, like present it or discuss it, roundtable discussion or something. It's up to your imagination and your discipline and your assessment, how you use it, right? But the important points that she makes is like the student should explain concepts or skill in a specific context, because AI deals with the data it's fed with, it's trained on, and it's as good as that data. So if a particular location of Khorog is not in that data set, it won't be, it will create something still. It's so nice, it doesn't refuse you anything. It creates something, but that is fake, as I said. So whenever there is an assessment, some geographical location, link it to that. So that is the first direction. The second direction is from literature review alone to referencing lectures. So the students just don't go and do a literature review, but they link the points in that literature review to your lecture that you have delivered in classroom. And maybe if they could reference that date or that time or that teacher or that point, that shows like they are engaged. They're not just relying on artificial intelligence. Number 3, from presentation of ideas to defense of views. So at this stage, when we ask them to write an essay or do a presentation, they present their ideas or what they have learned, right? So instead of presentation, we create sort of like assignment where they come, they defend what they think, and then the other students challenge that. So that will show their deep engagement and learning of the contents or the ideas or material, and other things also, like critical thinking, evaluative judgment, and stuff. And finally, from working alone to student and faculty partnership. So don't just you create the assignments. Ask them, okay, what kind of assignment would be suitable for it? And because sometimes these students are a step ahead of us when it comes to technology. So these are the 4 directions by Professor Chen. And now Monash University suggested 10 strategies for redesigning assessment. And here I request your active engagement. So I'm going to display 2 columns, the traditional assessment mode and how we can adapt it to the AI mode. So I want your like input on that. So here's my first 3 rows. Right. So the first one is using openly available texts, like on Google Scholar or some websites which has books. And so what could you do to adapt it to the AI? Monomodal assessments and assessment of submitted work. Your ideas, please. You can turn on your mic or type in the chat. So my suggestions. So we know that AI.
You're muted, Hamid. You're
You're
muted.
muted. You're muted. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. So right. So yeah, I already mentioned multimodal assessments, and assessing real-time performance instead of asking them to submit an essay. Then, okay, sorry. Next is
Clearly, the enhanced format you're looking for is assigning grades for the process.
Yeah. So what we can do, right? Instead of single discrete assessment, we can have a longitudinal assessment. This is what I did with my preparatory year students last year. They needed to write a research paper, so it was sort of like broken in pieces. And then they needed to use document where I could go and track what they were doing from the starting till the end. And I could like, you can track a Google Doc and see what changes were made and what was deleted and what was added. Same can be done with a wiki. These days I'm using this wiki a lot in Moodle. And then I already provided example of one of them. And this could be done as so some broader principles, like they could serve as some broader principles if we are rethinking assessment and changing assessment in our courses, because what we did so far is no more valid. It doesn't give us a fair and reliable and valid idea of students' learning. So now we are faced with two things. Number one, we need to assure that they achieve the learning outcomes genuinely, they understand what they need to understand, they can do what they need to do, and at the same time, because we are heading for the um, era of artificial intelligence, they should be able to work with that. They should have evaluative judgment there. They should have skills and competencies, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So some broader principles these can serve. And I think instead of talking about these examples, I'll share with them with you in this chat sometime today or tomorrow. And then you can look at them and maybe they serve as models or stimulate some ideas how to change your own assessment. So quickly, I'm just changing the slides, but as I said, I'll post them here. Right. And finally, the floor is open for discussion, questions, comments.
Colleagues, please, the floor is open for questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about essays. So the one way of increasing the effectiveness of assessments in this way would be eliminating these kind of essays. So for example, it's of course not possible for all the subjects, I would say, but for the subjects that I teach, for example, for geology, it's possible to assign them tasks that require observation of real world objects. And we usually organize field trips for this kind of observations, so they go in the field. And I don't care if they use ChatGPT or not, because if they haven't observed properly certain features in the field, they would not be able to describe it even if they use ChatGPT. Of course, they use ChatGPT to improve their text that becomes easy to read, and they may also reconsider, rethink their own way of writing and improve their skills. But still, since they are observing real world objects, you can see if they are observing it properly or not. And then this way, you make sure that the assignment was completed by the student and he gained some knowledge. The other way of doing it, the other form would be assigning lab assignments, again with real tasks to complete, and you have given data that they need to use to do that. And even if they use any AI to learn, to find out equations, to find out the way how to do it easily, they eventually need to draw their results and to present it. And while doing this, they learn and they show their knowledge. So this way would, I think, help not all the subjects, but some of them to improve this assessment process, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I agree with this comment, valid comment. Yes, I mean, we cannot like worry too much about AI use. They ought to use it, I would say, right? We, as I said, we need to embrace it ourselves and let our students use it. Yes, it should be how and why and when. If they know these three things, then it's fine. Yeah. So valid observation, Javed. Thank you. Yes, Iron's hand was up.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So thank you very much. Actually, this kind of conversation is really, I think, very relevant at this point in time. But I think, I mean, there were some points that actually I agree with Jobin. I think before we think of our assessment this time, that's why we are kind of grumbling how to make our assessment relevant in the time of AI, is actually, I think we need to rethink also our current learning outcomes. Because I think with these advances in AI in education, a number of our learning outcomes definitely will remain relevant, but many of our learning outcomes may not be relevant anymore. So this time, in fact, in the prep, in science, you know, that practical work that Jovid was mentioning. So this time I'm actually testing a kind of pedagogy that I just kind of coined based on the experience I had last semester. And I kind of call it, it's like an egg being nurtured and soon to hatch, data-driven pedagogy. So this time, what I am working with my prep is we collect data. So the topic I kind of developed to problematizing the theme. Some themes are already a problem, so it's fine. They can collect data. But some topics in science are not really problem because they are just plain concept. So I need to problematize them so that they can collect some data related to that. And then after, we process the data, and then they will develop their understanding of the concept with that particular data. So whether they are going to use AI, ChatGPT, whatever, so that they are able to understand the data, I'm fine with it. But you see, they are now working more with data. So this time they are complaining because things are getting harder. And I said, of course, because you now have an artificial intelligence that would assist you. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much for sharing that. And I think this is the time that we sort of start doing things and sharing things. So if we work in our isolated bubbles, we will not know what's happening in my class and what's like is valid there and working well and what's not working in your class. As a community of practice, we need to share what we are doing and how is it effective. And I think we need to have more sessions like this. Even one tip, one idea is worth sharing. So if we could create that kind of culture and that kind of sort of like consistency where we do things in our class and share it with each other, we develop, right? So that's what I strongly advocate and suggest. Musa asked, yeah, how do you do that? How to make sure that students have a faith in academic integrity? I don't know if I can fully do it or I'm successful in doing it. But what I do, I keep consistently tell them, look, you're not here to get a grade. So 70, 80, 90, that doesn't matter. You're here to learn and show me your learning and give me your best, not your work compared to this one or compared to that one or to my standards. What is your best standard? Try to achieve that, right? So sort of individualization, personalization of their learning, their approach, and their product, what I call artifacts, and not a lot of emphasis on grade, but a lot of emphasis on learning. Some of them do it. They listen, they understand. Still, there are some who cheat. And this is how life is. This is how life has been, and this is how life will be. There will be cheaters, yes. Yeah, we cannot really eliminate it 100%. Yeah.
May I just being kind of a moderator, also ask a question? I feel it relates to what Musa is asking you. At the beginning of the course, I imagine you discuss AI and implications of AI with your students. I wonder how do they react? What kind of questions do they ask? What kind of answers do you give?
When it came, I had a slide where I put plagiarism, things about plagiarism. It is last semester, like last year with prep year. And there was one image of like ChatGPT was crossed and it was cheat GPT. And they said, the student said, teacher, why is it cheat? It's not always cheating. And I said, yes, they have a point. So our students know what is cheating and what is not. They, as I said, they are a step ahead of us. We need to trust them. We need to believe in them, right? And then when I got into discussion, they had a fairly good idea of when the use is ethical and when the use is unethical. And then I said, okay, let's use it. But one thing, you need to cite it. Like you need to tell me when you used it and for what, right? And then we had a discussion, okay, this is when we are going to use it, and this is now when we are not going to use it, and we are not going to like take ideas from there. And if we take, we need to cite that. And I also created some kind of guidelines like, this is what we expect from you. And I put that in my, at that time in my Moodle page, and now it is a part of my course syllabus. So there's a section on that in my course syllabus description. So then obviously repo makes a big difference, right? As I said, we need to trust them. They understand. They are very logical, rational, honest human beings. And then I told them, listen, if something happens, like when you feel under pressure that now it's time to use ChatGPT unethically, stop, contact me, seek help, that this is the assignment. I cannot do it. I am under pressure and I'm about to cheat or use ChatGPT unethically. So what help can you provide? So, I mean, this is sort of, I have to relinquish that control and that pressure and sort of like go for a kind of give and take with them. And it worked. And as I said, yes, not 100%, because if I say 100%, that is bluffing. Nothing is 100%. But even if 70% of my students didn't use it unethically, that's an achievement, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you. Professor Mohsen is writing in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. This is sort of echoes what I already said. So I tell them, look, if you don't learn what you need to learn here, there will be a gap in your knowledge in postgrad or further, right? And as I said, they understand it. They know that they are here for learning. And we as teachers also need to create the kind of environment in our classrooms where they don't feel forced to cheat, right? We need to show some kind of flexibility. We need to understand the step into their shoes, understand their struggles, their battles, their problems also. All students are not perfect. All students are not like well prepared for the study. They go through a lot of things every day in classrooms, outside classrooms. So we need to have that empathy and that objective sort of capability to look into their mind and understand them. Yeah. So yes. But again, I said I will not be prescriptive, and because you people are quiet, so I need to talk. Right. Sorry about that.
Probably there are more questions or comments. Or someone wants to share his or her own practice. This is not going to be the end of this discussion. I'm 100% sure. It is going to stay with us for a long time. It's going to influence. I'm trying to avoid the word disrupt. Choshanda, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that sometimes this using these AI tools, writing this written word does not really. I mean, it shows. I mean, if shows very clearly that it was generated by AI. So I recently got an essay where my first assignment from student used this AI, but the way it was written, it does not really, show that somebody has did the readings or stuff. You clearly identify it as an AI tool sort of generative, because most of the time it gives you a very general sort of information, even it's written. Okay, yes, because in my course, I'm not assessing their writing skills or their English language skills, because I don't really, sometimes, it doesn't matter to me. For me, it's more important their analytical skills, how they analyze the things. But for example, I got the document, the written document. There's no anything that would, show the analysis. It's a very generative sort of statements that has been generated by the AI. Sometimes it doesn't even understand what's actually should be written. It just generates the answers and then gives whatever it comes up with. So it's very easy also to detect by their professors. So for me, I mean, using it as a method of getting information and understanding things, or if you're not familiar with the for example, terminology or something like that, it's fine. But as a written word to submit, it's very, very easy to detect.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the more we engage with it, the more we know that the writing is without soul. Like it's a skeleton, but there's no flesh and blood in that. And after repeated observations of the text generated by it, you can see how it works. But then there's GPT-4, which has better capabilities. You can train it what kind of writing to generate. But still, the reassuring aspect is that this is artificial intelligence. It's very smart, but after all, there's a human being behind it, and it's easy to see what it's doing because somebody has programmed it. And human mind limitations are also in that programming, and we need to spot its weaknesses. What are the weaknesses of this AI? And then also probably use it as raising awareness among our students. Yes, this is where it is. As I mentioned, the word evaluative judgment. They should have their evaluative judgment if it is usable or it is something to be discarded. So I mean, thank you for sharing that, Choshambe. Yes, this happens. Yeah.
Anyone else, probably? I just want to take my time and thank you, Hamid, for this incredibly interesting and fascinating talk, and for so much work that you have invested into preparing this presentation. It's just awesome. There is no other word, and I take it out of the vocabulary of our students. Awesome. Thank you very much. It's
pleasure.
really impressive, and so much work you have done for this 1 hour of presentation, so many slides, such rich information. Thank you very much, and I hope really everybody can see that we are trying, everyone is trying to share our experiences and really share what we find out, what are the challenges, what are the solutions, and building the community of practice. And because it's going to be a real challenge, as Hamid mentions, ChatGPT, the next level, the next generation is going to be smarter and smarter and smarter, and it's not going to stop. So we need to somehow react, incorporate, or discard whatever the reaction is going to be, and we need to think more of it. Thank you very much, Hamid. It's been really a pleasure of an hour. Thank you very much, and let's see you soon. See you soon, colleagues, in the next wave of our workshops, and have a nice evening. And Hamid, thank you again.
Yeah, so my last comment, it's up to colleague if they take it. Let's evolve the chat of this meeting into AI assessment for AI era. Here we share our resources, here we share our ideas, and let it develop into that, so that we can do good teaching and our students can do good learning. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to my.
Thank you.
I mean,
Can
I
we
know
get
it's
the
not easy
slides
at the end
also?
of the day. I'll post everything here. There's slide. There's another file, and I'll post everything here. But now I'm too
Thank you.
tired, so maybe when I get some sleep, or I play soccer, and then.
Sure.
Yeah.
We didn't ask a lot of questions. We were just learning.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
everybody,
much.
and see you soon. Yeah. Bye bye.
Sure.
Thank you.